Hello, agents. Danielle and I just finished our Facebook Live about what to expect when they're inspecting for sellers. So, obviously, if you're in other markets in different parts of the country, this is going to be different. We always give that disclaimer. In our market, we have some pretty specific outlines in our contract. I was just reading someone's post today about Texas and whether a buyer or buyer's agent should send an inspection. In our area in Illinois, in Chicagoland, that's not done. Our attorneys will request specific sections of the inspection if that's pertinent, and the sellers or the buyer side is only allowed to send them if they're requested by the attorney. As a matter of fact, sending the inspection without a request for it is cause for cancellation of the contract. Absolutely. And most of the time, the seller's side, the seller's agent, and the seller's attorney will not open the attachment on the email, won't look at it, does not want to know, because we're required to disclose every item that's on there, even if it's disputable, even if it's not, something that was ever considered a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And we understand, and it depends on the market too, of how we not if we want that, but what we're explaining to our clients. So we have a pretty extensive, I would say, I don't know, I guess I've never seen other areas, but is it 24, 25 different line items on what we call our real property disclosure? It's our main disclosure. We do have a radon disclosure and a lead-based paint disclosure that are separate. But the meat and potatoes of our disclosures is a 24 point question, and it goes from anywhere between, the roof. It's basically the entire house, right? The stability of the house. Is there flooding? Is there foundational issues? Is the roof okay? Is the heating okay? Is, the windows okay?
And doors.
Windows and doors. Again, it's to make sure that the overall integrity of the home is there. We even have a line item that a lot of buyers or sellers will chuckle at, which is, has this house ever had meth produced in it? Because it's a huge, serious health issue, potentially, if not.
Even meth heads are not allowed to lie. Right. They have to fill it out truthfully.
Correct.
So we've, encountered people. I have a seller now who lives in another state where it's non-disclosure, and I'm like, well, that's not how it works here. The sellers need to disclose everything, and the realtor needs to disclose anything. So if a seller is aware of something, and we're not, then it's on the seller. But if we're aware of it, it's on us, and it's our license. So that's really important. But one of the things is that Danielle and I usually don't see inspection as an opportunity for buyers to claw back some of the money that they offered on the house. We really see it as a serious subject, a serious opportunity for buyers to possibly get remedy for things that would have changed their mind if they had known about them. Things that we didn't see when we walked through the house, things that were not apparent and that the seller might not know of. And so the seller and the agent didn't take it into account when they priced it. But that might be enough of a concern that a buyer wants it fixed before they move in, or that it would have changed what the buyer was willing to offer. And so that's probably not something that's worth $50 or $100. Anybody, in our opinion, who's asking for $100 or for something minor to be repaired isn't really going with the goodwill and spirit of the contract and the transaction. And really, in our contract is specifically against the terms of the contract. It says you can only ask for big things.
Absolutely. And we try to stick to it as best we can. But of course, in every situation is individual, right? So you have a blanket statement, or a blanket thought, but then there are some times where you might have to get around that a little bit. But we do try to stick to it because that's the point of a contract, and it's the point of our, and part of that is to protect sellers. From
Sellers who take
having
their home
to
off the market,
die.
who choose an offer in this market, expect that, you know, it's going to be honored, and that the buyer's going to do what they said they're going to do. And that's not always the case. I mean, we know that there are realtors who are even telling buyers that, hey, let's just get it under contract and then, you know, we'll see what we can get back. That's nonsense. Don't do that.
Yep.
And, you know, it turns around. So when sellers are also in some cases saying, hey, take it or leave it, for things that are really serious, and trying to get buyers for every penny that they can in this market. In previous markets, when it was more of a buyer's market, there was a meme. It said, the inspector says, the doorbell doesn't work. We want a new doorbell, flooring, kitchen, and jacuzzi. So don't be that kind of agent. Danielle and I strive never to be. Now, there are times when our buyers and sellers don't heed our advice 100%.
Well, we also live in an area that is an attorney area, which can be great in some instances. There's a lot of times where we're looking at, you know, discussions from nationwide realtor sites, Facebook pages, whatever, and social media pages, and the nightmares and the legal things that agents have to go through. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
No matter what
the addendum.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are helpful. We are grateful 95% of the time. But there are those instances where you have these attorneys who have to be the hero.
Usually it's because they're not really a real estate attorney. They all think real estate is easy, so they can just do that along with whatever their normal area of interest
they're
is.
like a litigator or something like that.
Divorce attorney. You do not want a divorce attorney on your real estate transaction.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have buyers that have lost property after property, trying to make offers, clawing and scratching, and finally get an offer accepted. And we're under contract, and we've given them everything, including like future children to be born. And then the attorney is brother-in-law, and he steps in, and he's going to be everybody's savior and starts asking for, you know, walls to be repainted or something insane. Oh,
yes.
No, that's usually how that happens. When we deal with our team, with our attorneys who know us and trust us, that's a big thing too. I find that a lot of attorneys who don't do this for a living, who aren't in this all the time, they may have had experience with, we always say all realtors aren't created equal. So they may have had experience with realtors who were not good, and so they don't trust us. And that just sets everything.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with my attorneys over the years where it's like, what were you thinking? And I say it, and they're like, that's what I was thinking. So I'll call, you know, I'll back you up and it happens all the time when I talk to ours.
We're all advocating for our client.
Absolutely.
It's not a matter
of collusion type of thing. It's this is how much on board we are with each other. And
knowing that what we advise is the best thing for our client always.
Correct.
And that's really where the trust comes in.
But we also talked about pre-inspection. So that's not something we do a lot here. Is that something you guys do in your markets? I'd love to hear. Please write a comment and your pros or cons for that, because here we don't see it as a big issue. I think it's one of those, but we also have a different type of earnest money. You know, our earnest money can be returned as long as the attorney inspection period is open, which is what we're talking about, this 5 business day or longer period.
Sellers almost never get earnest money.
The sellers, there's like 14 different ways that a buyer gets it back. And it's not even a question, as long as AI is still open, that the buyers will get get it back. So having a pre-inspection isn't necessarily done here because there isn't this peace of mind we necessarily have to give buyers, which I could see when they're putting $30,000 of money in one of the states that, like, once that $30,000 is gone, it's gone. Buyers wanting some sort of, okay, what am I walking into when I get, do you know that the back half of the basement is bowing and about to collapse, and I'm giving you $30,000 to find that out later?
Yeah. Or markets where buyers are commonly waiving inspection. We're not seeing much of that. Even in our multiple offers, we don't see inspection waived often. We do see, as is contracts, but inspections are still happening. So in those cases, a pre-inspection might convince more buyers to jump on board with that. But
and again, our as-is contracts, the way it's written, it means that our clients, once they have an inspection, can make the decision to go ahead or back off. And again, even if they back off, they get that earnest money. There is no, as is means a different type of decision making, but to an extent, as we mentioned in our Facebook Live, that even if it's an as-is property, if I'm representing a seller, and Ruth, agrees, and that if radon comes high, if there's a structural issue found, if there's a hole in the roof and a mold-like substance, even though the buyers are as is, that's something our client, if they at all have the means to do, need to handle. Because putting it back on the market with now needing to change the disclosures.
And that depends a bit on market and price, et cetera. So I've had several buyers who have taken on the radon. I tell them this is, it's going to be $1,500 to $2,000. If that's something you're willing to take on, and we can go and we can tell the seller that ahead of time, then that's going to give you an edge on your offer. If it's a, $200,000 buyer, they may just not have that kind of cash to remedy that when they buy the house. So
I'm saying if they ask for it, like if they still come back and ask for it, they're usually asking for it because they
aren't willing to do it themselves, and they have, they very well might walk away. Exactly. Yeah. And then here again, because we have to disclose anything that we're aware of going back on the market or having a pre-inspection, if you're not willing to take care of every single thing that shows up in it, means that those things have to go on disclosures. And I know everybody's got different disclosures too, so it'd be interesting if people drop in the comments what their disclosures are like in their state. I know California's got like 14,000 pages, I believe. And some probably have no disclosures at all. So be really interesting to see how that goes. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you again. If you'd like, before this, we do a Facebook Live for the public, and you can tune in and see what we've got to say to people too.
All right. See you next week. Bye.
Appraisals next week.
Appraisals. Yeah.